7 planes left Missouri, just 7. They flew east, crossed the Atlantic, then the Mediterranean, refueled 3 times, never once touching down. 18 hours in the air, almost no radio contact the entire way. When they crossed into Iranian airspace, nothing happened. No alarms, no fighters scrambling. Iran's air defense network, one of the most layered in the Middle East, saw absolutely nothing. 25 minutes later, 3 nuclear facilities were rubble. And those 7 B-2s were already pointed home. That's the short version. Most people who saw the headlines still don't really understand what went on. So let's actually break it down. Here's the thing people miss. This war didn't start in 2025, not even close. For 4 decades, Iran and Israel were careful never to fight each other directly. They used other people for that. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis out in Yemen. Iran stitched together this whole network, called it the Axis of Resistance. Militias ringing Israel on every side, designed to bleed the country slowly without Iran ever having to put its own name on anything. And honestly, it worked for a long time. Then 2024 came apart. Israel dismantled Hamas's leadership, gutted Hezbollah's command structure in Lebanon, killed Iranian generals in Syria, and then, for the first time in history, actually struck inside Iran itself, hit air defense systems, missile production on Iranian soil. Iran fired back. Ballistic missiles, drone waves. Israel knocked most of them down. By early 2025, the proxy strategy was basically finished. What was left was 2 countries on a direct collision course and everyone in the region watching it happen. June 13, 2025. Israel launched Operation Rising Lion. About 200 jets. Over 500 targets hit in the opening days. Air defenses, missile infrastructure, nuclear sites, all of it, in the first few hours. 9 days after that, the US came in. And that's when things got really one-sided. You need to understand what the B-2 Spirit actually is before any of this makes sense. It's a flying wing. No tail, no vertical surfaces designed from the ground up, so radar has almost nothing to bounce off of. The US Air Force describes its radar cross-section as roughly the size of a bird. Northrop Grumman built it. $2.1 billion a copy. The most expensive warplane ever made, and there are only 20 of them. 7 of those planes flew from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri to Iran and back in a single continuous flight. The crews never landed. Refueled in the air 3 times, 18 hours. Their primary target was Fordo, a uranium enrichment plant literally inside a mountain. Iranian engineers put it there on purpose because they believed no aircraft could carry enough firepower deep enough underground to matter. They spent years and enormous resources on that assumption. It was wrong. 14 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, 30,000 pounds each, the largest non-nuclear bomb in the US arsenal, hit Fordo and Natanz. A submarine launched more than 24 Tomahawks at Isfahan at the same time. Over 125 American aircraft in the operation total. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs said it plainly afterward. Iran's air defense systems never detected the B-2s. Their fighters never scrambled. Total surprise, start to finish. The CIA director confirmed the key facilities were destroyed. Years of rebuild time, minimum. Stealth had been theorized about, argued over, marketed, and hyped for decades. This was the night it got proven. For real, at range, against a serious adversary. If the B-2 was the blunt instrument, the F-35I was the thing that made it all possible in the first place. The F-35I Adir. Adir means mighty in Hebrew, and the name isn't accidental. Israel didn't just buy F-35s, they negotiated for years to modify them. Their own electronic warfare suite. Their own targeting software. Conformal fuel tanks that push the range past 1,700 kilometers without a refueling stop. Modifications that, according to reporting at the time, genuinely surprised American engineers. The rule in Operation Rising Lion was simple. No Israeli aircraft entered Iranian airspace unless an F-35I was already in front of it. The Adir went first every time, took out radar sites, killed surface-to-air batteries, and then did something no other aircraft could, mapped the entire airspace in real time and fed that picture back to every F-15 and F-16 flying behind it, letting them operate in an environment they otherwise couldn't see. Over 12 days, Israeli F-35s flew more than 1,400 sorties. Iran's S-300 systems, Russian-built, genuinely capable, were destroyed. Israel didn't lose a single manned aircraft in combat. And then, March 4, 2026, an F-35I pilot flying over Tehran shot down an Iranian Yak-130, manned aircraft in the air in Iranian airspace. It was the first air-to-air kill in the entire history of the F-35. Anywhere, any country, any engagement. The Israeli Air Force chief got on the radio himself to tell the pilot, "What you just did is historic." He wasn't wrong. The F-35I cleared the road. The F-15I Ram and F-16I Sufa drove down it. The Ram Thunder is a long-range heavy strike variant Israel had built specifically for operations like this. It was part of that 200-jet opening wave on June 13th, dropping over 1,200 bombs in the first 24 hours alone. The Sufa Storm handled the precision work. Missile factories, radar installations, command infrastructure, spice-guided bombs, and long-range cruise missiles meant Israeli jets were hitting targets deep inside Iran without ever having to get close enough for a fair fight. These aren't new planes with no record. Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, the airframes that hit Iran had already been through all of it. Over 12 days, more than 500 Iranian military targets destroyed. Missile launchers, drone factories, command bunkers, senior military and government figures. By the June 24th ceasefire, the axis of resistance, 30 years in the making, had been taken apart from 30,000 feet. The B-2s didn't fly into Iran cold. Before Operation Midnight Hammer started, American F-22 Raptors and F-35s entered Iranian airspace ahead of the bombers. Their job, according to statements Trump himself made publicly, was to bait Iran's remaining air defenses, force them to light up their radars, give the B-2s a clear corridor. Iran didn't fire a single surface-to-air missile, F-22s, flying over Iran in Iranian airspace, daring the most expensive air defense network in the country to do something about it. Silence. Either the Israeli strikes had already finished off most of Iran's defenses, or whoever was left at those radar screens looked at what was coming and decided correctly that there was no good outcome from engaging. General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, confirmed both interpretations are consistent with what intelligence showed. Doesn't really matter which one is true, result was the same either way. Now the other side of this, the Iranian Air Force is, to be blunt, a flying museum. F-4 Phantoms, F-5 Tigers, MiG-29s, Su-24 Fencers. Aircraft from two separate Cold War eras that never got updated properly because of 40 years of embargo. And at the center of the whole fleet, the F-14 Tomcat. You know the Tomcat, the swing-wing jet from Top Gun. The Shah of Iran ordered 79 of them in 1976, 3 years before the revolution that ended the US-Iran relationship for good. What happened after is actually remarkable in a bleak kind of way. Iran kept those planes flying for nearly 50 years. No American parts, no manufacturer support, full sanctions. They cannibalized airframes from each other, reverse-engineered components, built domestic replacements. Some were upgraded under a program they called F-14AM, Advanced Modernized, with Iranian avionics and local missiles. How many were actually airworthy in 2025? Estimates ranged from 5 to 40 depending on the source, probably somewhere in the middle. Didn't matter. Israeli drones destroyed F-14S on the ground near Tehran in June 2025. The IDF released the footage. In March 2026, strikes hit the 8th Tactical Fighter Base in Isfahan. Satellite imagery showed at least 2 or 3 Tomcats destroyed, plus 10 other aircraft. The world's last operational F-14S, the only ones flying anywhere after the US Navy retired the type in 2006, appear to have been wiped out entirely. One Tomcat scrambled during the June campaign, flew briefly over Isfahan, came back without firing anything. The Persian Tomcat never actually got to fight, not once. Iran knew conventional air combat was a losing proposition. They tried it anyway. The Su-24 Fencer, their most capable offensive jet, attempted a strike on Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar on March 2, 2026. 2 of them, Qatari F-15S, intercepted both. Qatar's defense ministry confirmed the kills. 4 days later, the F-35I got its historic moment over Tehran. Iran had nothing left to answer with in the air. But Iran had something else, the Shahed drone, a one-way kamikaze weapon they'd already proven out in Ukraine, in Yemen, all across the region, cheap enough to produce by the thousands, simple enough to launch without pilots. In just the first 2 days of Operation Epic Fury, Iran launched over 1,150 drones at targets in the UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and Jordan. Figures compiled from public statements by those governments. Most were intercepted, not all of them. 3 Amazon Web Services data centers in the UAE were struck and damaged. Desalination infrastructure in Bahrain was hit. U.S. military positions across the region took drone strikes. Iran's answer to 5th-generation stealth wasn't a better jet, it was volume. Cheap, expendable, launched by the thousands. That gap between the most sophisticated air power ever fielded and a $20,000 drone that can still hit something is the most uncomfortable lesson to come out of this entire war. So what does all of this actually mean? Stealth works. The B-2 flew 18 hours into the most defended airspace in the Middle East and went completely undetected. The F-35I led 1,400 sorties without a single combat loss. This isn't theoretical anymore. It happened. A legacy Air Force, no matter how creatively maintained, no matter how much engineering went into keeping it alive, cannot survive a first strike by 5th-generation aircraft. Iran's jets didn't really get to fight. They were destroyed on the ground or dispatched on the rare occasions they managed to get airborne. And the country that loses in the air doesn't stop fighting. Iran launched over 1,100 drones in 48 hours. It struck targets across 9 countries. It went after data infrastructure, water supplies, oil facilities. Without an air force, it became something else, a drone army operating at scale. What this war showed the world is that the old model, fighter jet versus fighter jet, Air Force versus Air Force, is giving way to something harder to solve. Billion-dollar stealth platforms on one side, $20,000 kamikaze drones on the other. Nobody has fully figured out what to do about that yet. Not the US, not Israel, nobody. Leave a comment. Which aircraft do you think defined this war? And which lesson do you think matters most going into whatever comes next? If you want to understand what comes after the B-2, what the US is already building to replace it, that breakdown is the next video. Subscribe. New video every week.